In a stunning turn of events, not-so-famous Game Gearhead member Sean the Game Boy Zero is being held hostage by a mysterious cloaked man. This man is said to be part of the resistance group known as the Ignorance. The man has left a message for all you viewers at home to view. What you're about to see might either be disturbing or ridiculous.
Greetings. I'm the leader of the Ignorance group, and I have many plans for this young man. He is resented for believing that all licensed games are terrible. This has been a successful movement for my kind, up until this boy gave positive reviews on a group of Star Wars games.
Actually, I said Battlefront 2 is my favorite of the bunch, while the first and third games I didn't particularly care for.
Nonetheless, it was a collection of licensed games that he didn't hate. We tried to make him see things from our point of view by having him play Avatar: The Burning Earth. But even then, he still didn't hate the game.
No, the game sucks, it's just not as bad as people will make it out to be.
With that said, I have two final games for him to look at. Ones that are connected to his childhood. And,
Look, will you stop with the exposition and just let me play the game?
well, if you're so eager to, then by all means, go right ahead.
Thank you, God. Well, let's take a look at the game that he claims I'm going to hate so much. This is The Incredibles, the video game. Pixar, one of the best animation studios of all time, creating classics like the Toy Story series, Finding Nemo, Up, Inside Out, and major annoyances like Cars, Monsters University, The Good Dinosaur, and Give It Time. However, before those annoyances I mentioned came out, there was one superhero film that came out called The Incredibles. The first of many superhero films Disney would make, but I digress. This film is one of my all-time favorites. It had a great mix of action, drama, comedy, and character development. So I wouldn't blame you to assume the game was made a while after the film. Well, the game didn't. It actually came out almost 2 weeks before the film premiered. Now I'm guessing they did that just for the sake of selling copies, since the game features some scenes from the film. Well, I don't really blame them for doing that, since a lot of movies make their money from the merchandise. Revenge of the Sith did the same thing, and that was an even more obvious case. So I don't really mind it here. Okay, so the gameplay of The Incredibles is, for the most part, pretty self-explanatory. You're placed in linear levels where you complete platforming challenges, solve puzzles, and play the occasional minigame. Like I said before, the game follows the events of the movie, so you go through some of the film's famous scenes. So you go through the burning building, the jungle, Syndrome's base, and fight the Omnitroid in the volcano area. And I gotta say, for a 2004 GameCube game, it looks pretty damn good. Well, okay, the interior tends to get a little repetitive, but the outdoor sections, particularly the jungle, look really nice. Very lush, very green. I can't say it looks the best the system could do, but after the bland look of the Burning Earth, this feels so refreshing. Not to mention the cutscenes are animated very well. Again, refreshing. But in all seriousness, the animation looks and feels like The Incredibles. And they got most of the voice cast to reprise their roles. Not to mention, having the film's soundtrack playing in the stages is awesome. If you know my taste in music, then you know I love jazz and big bands, and The Incredibles is filled with it. So with that said, the game really looks and feels like the movie, but in terms of how it plays, it's actually kind of various. There are 5 playable characters and they each have their own playstyle. Mr. Incredible, as you guessed, is the strongest and gets the most stages. The control is for the most part pretty good, movement's pretty smooth, and the jumping doesn't feel stiff at all. He can also dodge roll to avoid attacks, but it's only really necessary to use once. Though I will say there is something really cool about the after image it has. It looks like you're a Matrix agent. And now, because I don't know otherwise, The Incredibles, directed by the Wachowskis. I have no shame. Elastigirl controls pretty identically to Mr. Incredible, except that her attacks aren't as strong, but she makes up for it with a lot of range. You can knock enemies out from really far away, and she's overall faster to boot. Honestly, she's my favorite character to play as. The combat is somehow more simplistic than the Burning Earth. You can hit B to punch, hit B in midair to do a jump punch, and you have a super move by pressing the Y button. It does have a limit though, so you can't go crazy with it. Yeah, I know I brought up how the limited combat can be really bad for a game like this, but for some reason, despite the fact that it's more simplistic, it's still more fun than Burning Earth's combat. It took me a while to figure out why I thought this, and I think I found 2 reasons why. One, the combat isn't the game's main focus. I mean, it's a big factor of the game, but it's mostly centered around platforming challenges. And it is pretty evenly balanced with the combat, so you never get too much of one thing over the other. Another reason? It just sounds good to kill a bunch of enemies. Let's compare. This is knocking enemies out in the Burning Earth.
We must work together.
And here it is in The Incredibles. Damn! Now that's satisfying. Whenever you hit an enemy, you just feel that punch connect, and it's so awesome. One more time, Mr. I. The enemy list isn't too extravagant. Well, early on you get to fight a bunch of robots, which look really cool, but later on you're just regulated to fighting mooks. They aren't terribly smart, but you should be careful when dealing with a large crowd. Now this is something I find hilarious. Now, in a level called Syndrome's Base, you can walk into this office area where you can see some of the mooks working. Even when the alarm goes off and you're fighting all of these enemies with these loud noises going on, the guys at the control panel don't think to turn around and help. Hey Jenkins, did you email me those new Omnidroid designs for this month? I can't seem to find them anywhere. Johnson, for the love of God, turn around and help us! Never mind, I found them. Alright, what were you asking? Now you might have noticed I haven't really talked about the other playstyles so far, and this does lead into a problem I have with the game. A majority of playtime is with Mr. Incredible, which is fine. He gets the most screen time in the movie, so they follow that aspect pretty well. I just wish the other characters got more playtime. I know what you're thinking, it wouldn't follow the movie if they gave him more levels. Well, Dash gets a level that has nothing to do with the movie trying to get to school, so what the hell? Why not have more levels for the other characters? But in terms of what the other playstyles offer, well, Dash is essentially a Mach speed level. You're constantly moving forward with no way to stop, and you have to dodge a lot of obstacles. Gee, doesn't that sound really fucking familiar? But in all fairness, these are way better than the Mach speed levels in Sonic 06. For one thing, there's only 2 levels. Secondly, you can control how fast you can go, so it makes turns easier. Third, you don't have any lives in this game, so you can retry as much as you want. And fourth, there isn't a lot of trial and error in these stages. Now that said, there are some problems. The control is a bit too slippery for my liking, and checkpoints are spaced out way too far. So don't be surprised if you end up trying to section multiple times in a quick succession. The next playstyle is with Violet, who only has 1 stage, and thank God for that! This is probably the biggest waste of time the game has to offer. Apparently, Violet was a big fan of the Metal Gear Solid series, so she decided to have her levels be stealth levels. This just comes out of nowhere, and it's so pathetically easy and ends too fast. So they decided in order to increase the difficulty, they should have her be killed with 1 shot. This makes absolutely no sense. She has the ability to form a force field around her, so why can't we use that? I mean, it's not bad, it's just pointless, especially for Violet. I like her as a character, and the fact that she got this, calling it a letdown would be an insult to letdowns. As for the 5th gameplay style, well, as you can tell from the clip of Jack Jack, that would be too difficult to pull off, so let's play some Marble Madness. Yeah, this is probably the most random idea to make a level on. I mean, we only saw this thing for like 12 seconds in the movie, and it somehow got its own level. But I gotta be honest here, I love this stage. It's just pure dumb fun rolling around and mowing everything down in your path. Granted, I really don't understand how gunshots lower the health. You see them shoot the shield with the movie with no effect, but I guess it would be too easy if gunshots did nothing, so I guess it's an even trade-off. Now hey, if that means I can play as a giant purple hamster ball mowing everything down in my path, I'll take it. The level design is, for the most part, pretty straightforward. There isn't much in terms of alternate pathways, but it makes up for that with some pretty memorable set pieces, like slingshotting your way across different areas or grappling your way through certain obstacles. Each level does have its own distinct identity, which I think is necessary in order to create an engaging experience. And there's even some interesting design mentality when making this game. You can unlock a developer interview to show what exactly they were trying to accomplish with this game.
Well, the movie's about an hour and a half long. The game's about 15 hours long, so there's a lot of content that has been added to the game to make sure that it offers a competitive experience. So there are places in the film where they might spend a little bit of time, and we're spending a lot of time. So for instance, maybe a 30-second scene in the film might be a 13-minute level in the game.
Wow, that's actually not a bad idea. I like the concept of taking certain scenes and expanding them into long bubbles. I have a feeling that a huge aspect of making this game was recapturing the charm and feeling that the movie has. In a sense, you're playing the movie. Now with that said, this mentality doesn't always work. Some of the levels can go on a little too long for my liking. Thankfully, it's not painfully long due to the level structure changing on a regular basis, but there are times where I felt the level design would have benefited if it were shortened by 5 minutes. I think if they did that, the game's flow would have been a lot better. So, hey, Matrix Reject. How is this supposed to break me?
Well, it's a licensed game based off a movie you loved as a child. Surely inferiority would be enough to make you hate this game.
Well, yeah, I'd rather watch the movie than play this, but the game on its own? It's fine.
Barton, you said the game is fine?
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but after experiencing the Boarfist that was burning Earth, this is a fucking godsend.
Wait, you found nothing about this game that utterly pisses you off?
Oh, no. There are some major problems with the game. First off, the boss fights suck. You think in the beginning, oh, it's not so bad. These guys go down pretty fast. And then the second boss comes in. This fight drags, and it takes forever to finish. That and it has really annoying respawn. If you die close to the end of the fight, you have to fight it all over again. Which leads into the second problem I have with this game. The checkpoint placement is awful. There are many points where you have to complete large set pieces of the level, and if you die, you have to start from the very beginning of that section. A whole 7 minutes wasted, and now you have to traverse it all over again. However, it doesn't get nearly as bad as Mr. Incredible's final level, Rocket Silo. Fuck this place. Seriously. This stage is absolute hell. There's so many rooms where you have to kill enemies. This section where you have to use a turret is absolute shit because the controls whacked down. There are too many enemies to take out at once. You have to fight this tank, which takes 2 minutes to beat 4 goddamn times. And this swinging section can just die. You always fall short every time you try to make a jump to the next hook, and you have to do it all over again. With all these aspects combined, including the retries from dying, this stage took me 47 minutes to complete. 47 minutes! That's longer than Eggman Land and Sonic Unleashed. Hey, here's a crazy idea. Why not cut the level in half and give that time to another character? I know Mr. Incredible is the main character, but for God's sakes, he does not deserve a level this long.
Ah, so there is something you hate about this game.
Well, yeah, but no game's without flaws. I still think there's enough good in this for me to actually like it. I like the level design, the control is for the most part pretty good, and it does manage to capture some of the spirit of the movie. That takes skill to pull off well, and I feel this game manages to do it just fine.
Well, you're not finished yet. You still have the final boss to deal with.
Fine. The final boss with the Omnidroid is more annoying than it is bad. A majority of the fight is spent running back and forth and occasionally attacking it with sometimes lifting its foot off of the remote. Also, you have a giant robot that learns from every fight and it has state-of-the-art weapons. And for some reason you felt it was a good idea to have it be controlled by a wrist-sized remote.
Not a great plan.
With one final blow, we defeat the Omnidroid, thus ending The Incredibles, the video game. So, yeah, how is this supposed to be troublesome?
Simple. It's not good.
How would you know? I mean, have you even played the game?
Don't need to. I can tell it's terrible.
Well, you won't know for sure if you don't play it.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay, we're getting nowhere with this. I'll play it as long as you play this game.
Rise of the Underminer? Oh yeah, I forgot about this game.
It's a sequel to the game, although I don't know why they made a sequel to this game instead of the movie.
Well, at least they confirmed a sequel coming out in 2019.
Oh, I know it's gonna be so good. Who knows what it's gonna be about?
Yeah, like maybe it'll take place years later and the kids have grown up and like maybe the writing and directing will be just as good as the first one. Hopefully the acting, I hope the acting is just as good. You know, in Pixar, the acting is always amazing. But I really hope the villain is really good because I don't want Stinger from that. I don't know how he survived that weird color
come from this movie.
Right? But
Okay, let's stop beating around the bush and just play these games.
okay, well, here you go.
Thank you. And I dare you to hate that game.
Well, in that case, I dare you to love that game.
Alright, I will. Wait, that's not what I'm...
Well, let's take a look. Yeah, so this is a really weird concept for a game. You make a sequel to the video game as opposed to making a sequel to the movie. And it's not like the game's story is anything dazzling. It has none of the character development from the first movie, and the villain is completely one note. The plot is pretty much the Underminers building an army of robots to take over the surface world. And it's up to Mr. Incredible and Frozone to stop him. The Supers end up going through all of the Underminers' factories until they finally catch up with the little bastard and manage to take him out. That's about it. The plot is incredibly bare bones with no interesting characters or dialogue to pull it through. Well, okay, there are these two characters which I like. One is Doug, who's pretty much a robot who's bored out of his mind and wants to sleep. And then we get the Custodian. What a delight this guy is. He runs the Underminer's rollback factory, and you swear looking at the design he would just be some uptight prick. But just listen.
Do not fail me, Custodian. I understand, Underminer. The deadline has changed. I have never missed a deadline. 99 more Gilgenbots shipped to the surface to complement the flooding.
If you have not died of laughter yet, then you're watching the most subtle performance you've ever seen in your entire life. I don't know why, but when you put that voice up against this somewhat threatening image, it's hilarious. It's as if a robotic Richard Simmons was voicing a businessman. It just cracks me up.
It's sweating time! Come on! Oh! Get that body going!
I'll be quick with this one. This has appeal, but not on the same level as the first game. As I mentioned before, the only playable characters are Mr. Incredible and Frozone, which I think is cool, no pun intended. I think it's interesting to be able to play as a character with ice powers. And hey, if it's a character that's played by Samuel L. Jackson, I'm all for that. I just wish they did more with their powers. Mr. Incredible can do pretty much the same thing as last time, except he can't do his super punch anymore, and picking up enemies isn't as easy since you can only pick up certain objects with stars above their heads. Frozone isn't as strong as Mr. Incredible, but he can freeze enemies and projectiles for Mr. Incredible to pick up, and he has a short glide ability which can knock enemies off their feet. Other than that, the two control pretty much the same. There's no difference in speed or jump height. One thing you'll notice very quickly about this game is that it's a lot more action focused. There's barely any large platforming sections, it's just attacking enemies throughout the majority of the levels. And I would be fine with that if the combat were a little bit more diverse. Yes, the only attack you have is mashing the square button and it gets old really fast. However, there is a way to mitigate that since Rise of the Underminer brings in a level up system. You can collect experience points in the stages by killing enemies to level up certain attributes like health, attack strength, or their powers. The one you'll want to level up the most, however, are the super moves. You can find certain enemies with spots above their head, and when you kill them, you can collect the spot, which means you have a super move, which is pretty much a screen nuke that destroys all the enemies in the current area. This can really help when you feel overcrowded or surrounded by enemies. And it utterly destroys certain bosses. Speaking of which, the boss fights are okay. There are only 3 bosses, and to be fair, I do like one of them, and that's the fight against the Magnemizer Guardian. It's more than just beating it up since it requires you to use both characters and use their own unique abilities. The other bosses are really nothing special. You're just fighting it and the other robots thrown in the ring. And when it comes to structure, that's about it. It's a really simplistic game. Actually, you know what I've been reminded of constantly while playing this game? The Burning Earth. And I know that's not necessarily a good thing, but the similarities are apparent. The straightforward level design, the beat 'em up playstyle, character specific attributes, an elevator section. Man, there's a lot that Burning Earth borrowed from this. If you watch the Burning Earth review, you'll know that I was for the most part pretty harsh on it. And since a lot of factors Rise of the Underminer you're used in this game, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that I'd say it's just as bad. But it really isn't. For one, the control is a lot better, movement's a little smoother, and the jumping feels a lot more natural. Second, the stage design is a lot better. Burning Earth rarely had any platforming elements, and when they were there, they felt forced and clunky to go through. And while there aren't too many platforming sections in this game, the ones they go through are incorporated well enough that I think they're fun to go through. Lastly, and this is the biggest reason, Rise of the Underminer is just overall more memorable than Burning Earth. Rise of the Underminer has a decent amount of set pieces in its levels, like the platforms that sink when you stand on them, a tower that you have to take down by removing all the bolts, leading a group of scientists on a set path to escape, security lights that activate lasers, and even a giant ball that will crush you if you don't clear the path. Burning Earth has those annoying glitchy platforms that move back and forth. Yeah, there's really nothing of substance here. This may also have to do with their length. Now I'm gonna bring in the first Incredibles game just for comparison's sake. Now, the Burning Earth was around 7 to 8 hours long, a pretty decent length for a video game. The Incredibles took around 10 hours, again, pretty decent length. Rise of the Underminer? 2.5 hours. What the fuck happened? Now use this as a point of advantage since the game is shorter, the monotony isn't as obvious as Burning Earth. On the other hand, you go from a game that breaks the repetitive nature a lot within the span of 10 hours to a consistently repetitive game that's about 8 hours shorter. That just seems lazy. Why not have more characters to choose from? Why can't I control Elastigirl? Why can't I play as Dash and Violet? Why can't I play as Jack-Jack? Instead, we're just stuck with these two. Which again, I would be fine with if the combat were more diverse and varied. But as is, the gameplay is just kind of standard. Same could be said for most of the graphics. They're okay, but they don't really pop as much as the first game. But I guess that's what you come to expect from a game that largely takes place underground. The music, on the other hand, is actually pretty good. While some tracks are better than others, they do have an appropriate sound considering the stage. On the other hand, there's not much else to talk about. It's just kind of standard. It's not bad. If anything, I'm surprised it wasn't just a complete afterthought. I mean, for a game that had really no reason to exist, it could have been a lot worse. I'd recommend you try this out if you're either curious enough or you have 2 hours on your hands. And hey, I'd say it's worth trying out just for the multiplayer. This stuff's pretty good. If you want a little bit more bang for your buck, I'd say stick with the first game. I'm surprised, these games are actually pretty decent. I mean, I wouldn't play them on a daily basis, but they're fun enough in their own right. So even though they are licensed games and they are somewhat flawed, I'd still say give it a shot.
Oh, come on! Okay, first, don't hate the bland Star Wars games. Then, you don't hate the Burning Earth. And now, you're going to recommend these two?
Look,
No! I've turned too many gamers to my side.
Okay, now hang on a second.
You need to break. If the likes of Superman 64 won't persuade you, then what will?
Hey, you can't just...
I will not let some amateur YouTuber who only has subscribers in the double digits category get in my way of the hatred for licensed games.
Okay, enough! What is your deal anyway? Why would it matter if it's licensed or not?
Because 85% of them are done just to make a cheap buck.
And what about the other 15%? I mean, it's not like those games don't exist. They're out there. There's a ton of good licensed games, so why only dwell on the bad ones?
Because they're not absolutely perfect.
No game is perfect, okay? Even games that are considered revolutionary or fantastic, they all have problems.
Well, aside from that, why are you so nice to these games? Why give it a pass when they have so many flaws?
Don't make me say it.
Say what?
I really don't want to.
What is it?
Please don't.
I want an answer. Why do you not hate these games?
They were the first video games I've ever played.
What?
Yeah. These are the first 2. I know a lot of people's first video games were the likes of Mario, Sonic, Crash Bandicoot, or even Banjo-Kazooie. But for me, it was The Incredibles. But, can you really blame me? The 6th generation of gaming was exploding with licensed games. I don't think there's ever been an abundance of them in any other generation of consoles. And since I was born in this generation, can you really blame me for playing them? I was a kid, I didn't know about good level design, quality control, or any of that. I just cared that I was playing as my favorite characters from my favorite movies. Kids are gonna play what they recognize, and they're gonna recognize movies and shows. And game producers know that. The ones behind The Incredibles did. They knew it was gonna be a success because it shares the name. And you know what? They fucking tried. It's not easy to recreate the feeling of a movie this great. And even though it's not as good as it could possibly be, you could tell the developers were trying their hardest to make something fun and entertaining. And no one, not even you guys, can take that away from them.
Well, I can't blame you for thinking that. Game design is hard enough, but to make it based on a movie is just another layer of pressure to deal with. I guess I learned that from playing this game.
Oh, right, I forgot. What did you think of it?
Honestly, it's not bad. I mean, there are better options out there, but this has some fun merit to it.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's how these games should be viewed.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Well, thank you for showing me this, and sorry about putting you through everything that's happened.
No hard feelings, man. Oh, just a quick question.
Yes,
Why out of all the YouTubers out there did you target me?
because of the abundance of Sonic videos.
What?
Me and the guys over at IGN hate Sonic, even the games that people say is fantastic.
Wait. You're from IGN?
Yes, look at the name. You can't spell ignorance without.
Oh, okay, I get it now.
Thank you, man. People usually catch that immediately.
Yeah, I don't really know how that flew over my head.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll go tell the other members about this. Maybe they'll enjoy it as well. Best of luck to you, Mr. Game Boy Zero.
You too, man. You too. Well, that was a trip, but I think it turned out pretty well in the end. Now, what the hell am I going to review next?
Hey, don't you have a straw poll to give you that answer?
Oh, right. Okay, let's see. No, you can't say that. Well, next time we meet up, it's time for the Batman Arkham Marathon.